Subscribe to my YouTube channel, share it with your friends, and comment your thoughts. The ride she shouldn't have taken. She should have trusted her instincts, but desperation has a way of silencing every warning bell. Rain hammered the windshield, the kind that blurred everything: the road, her future, even her tears. Emily's knuckles were white as she gripped the strap of her broken handbag. The bus had broken down miles back, and she had no choice. Her son, Micah, was sick, burning up with fever in her arms. The clinic was still 4 miles away. She had no car, no money, no umbrella, just a $10 bill and a dying phone. That's when the black SUV slowed down beside her on the empty roadside. The window rolled down. "You need a ride?" the driver asked. Emily hesitated. He looked polished. Early 40s. Navy blazer, white shirt, calm eyes that didn't match the rough weather around them. A gold watch gleamed faintly under the car's dome light. She should have said no, but Micah groaned, sweat trickling down his temple. She made a split-second decision. "Please," she said, "to the Maple Clinic." He leaned over and unlocked the door. "Hop in." As the door slammed shut behind her, she had no idea that this moment would upend her entire life. Emily clutched Micah close on the heated leather seat. The man glanced at the rearview mirror, but said nothing. No awkward small talk, no questions, just silence and windshield wipers beating against the storm. "Thank you," she managed, voice shaky. "My son, he's sick, really sick. I noticed." She looked at him. His face was unreadable. Expensive cologne lingered in the air. He didn't look like someone who belonged anywhere near the poor side of Eastbrook. "Why'd you stop?" she finally asked, a pause. "I know what it's like to need help and not have anyone stop." Emily stared at him. Something about the way he said it made her throat tighten. She looked away, guilt tugging at her. She'd judged him too quickly. Then Micah coughed violently, his little frame convulsing. Emily panicked. "Oh, God, please drive faster." The man didn't flinch. "Already on it." The clinic's flickering sign finally came into view. Emily unbuckled and reached for the door. "I'll wait," the man said. "Just in case." She blinked. "No, you don't have to. You've already—" "Go. He needs you." She grabbed Micah and ran in, heart pounding, soaked to the bone. Micah was admitted. Tests, IV drips, antibiotics. A tense few hours of sitting beside him, whispering promises he might not hear. By the time she returned outside, expecting the SUV to be gone, it wasn't. He was still there. "I owe you," she said as she opened the passenger side again, cheeks red with shame. "You don't owe me anything." "I'm Emily," he nodded. "Daniel." "Thank you, Daniel." He smiled faintly. "Where do you live?" She hesitated. Her apartment was falling apart, peeling walls, mold, and a broken heater. But where else could she go? West River, the old complex. He didn't blink, just nodded and pulled out into the dark. Halfway there, Emily couldn't stop herself. "You don't seem like someone who hangs around this side of town," he chuckled. "I don't." Silence again. Then she asked the question that would change everything. "So, what do you do?" Daniel stared ahead for a second too long. "I run a business," he said quietly. "What kind?" He didn't answer right away, but when he did, it was so soft she almost missed it. "A company my father started. We deal with investments, startups, tech." "Like a hedge fund?" "Something like that." She froze. His wristwatch, the car, the shoes, his voice. She swallowed hard. "You're rich." Another beat of silence. Then he said without pride or emotion, "I'm a CEO, Emily, and one of the wealthiest men on the East Coast." She laughed. "I'm first," but he didn't laugh back. Emily blinked at him. "You're joking." "No." She looked down at her clothes, torn sleeves, the smell of clinic antiseptic on her. Her life was in pieces. "Why would someone like you stop for someone like me?" Daniel didn't respond right away. Then he turned to her at the red light, face half-shadowed. Because once I didn't. The light turned green. He pressed the gas. When they reached her place, she hesitated before getting out. The broken street lamp flickered above them. I'm sorry for asking, but what happened? Daniel stared ahead. Someone needed help years ago, a woman. She had a kid too. I drove right past them. Emily didn't know what to say. And she died, he added flatly. Froze to death in the snow before morning. She covered her mouth, heart in her throat. Since then, I don't drive past. Emily stepped out of the car slowly, the door still open. Why are you telling me this? She whispered. He looked at her with something raw in his eyes. Because your son reminded me of her boy. And because... He trailed off. What? She asked. Daniel's voice was low, almost ashamed. Because I know who you are, Emily. She froze. The rain started again. What did you say? I didn't stop by accident. Emily's breath caught. The door closed, and the SUV pulled away, leaving her shivering on the sidewalk, her heart racing like a drum. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. His words echoed in her head. I know who you are. How? She hadn't given him her full name. She hadn't told him anything. And yet, he knew. The next morning, she called the clinic. Micah was stable. He'd need another round of antibiotics and rest. She headed back, on foot. But when she arrived, at the front desk, the nurse smiled warmly. Your bill's been taken care of. What? How? A man, Daniel, I think. He left before you came, paid in full. Emily's stomach dropped. Did he leave a number? An address? The nurse shook her head. Just said you'd understand. But she didn't. Not even close. That night, an envelope was slid under her apartment door. She stared at it like it was a live wire. No name. Just her name typed in capital letters. Emily Grace Holland. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a photograph. It was her, but much younger, barely 17, and standing beside her was a man she had buried long ago, her father. And next, to him, was Daniel. Only he looked younger too, and the back of the photo read, I owe you this and more. Emily dropped the photo, her hands trembling, her mind spun. How did he know her father? Why had he kept the photo? And most importantly, what did he mean when he said, I owe you this and more? He knew her father, but why had he disappeared years ago? Emily didn't sleep that night, not really. She lay in bed, her arms wrapped tightly around Micah, the photo still sitting on the edge of the table like it might burn through. The wood. She kept glancing at it, expecting it to vanish, but every time it was still there. Her teenage self, her father, and Daniel. But that didn't make sense. Her father died 14 years ago, shot during a robbery at a gas station. That's what the police had told her. That's what her mother had believed until her dying day. That's what she'd tried to forget while raising a child on her own, working minimum wage jobs, trying to survive. But now, this stranger, this millionaire, knew her full name, knew her father, had a photo of them together that she didn't even remember taking, and claimed he owed her? Why? The next morning, Emily dropped Micah off at daycare, his fever down but still weak, and caught the first bus downtown. She didn't know what she was doing, really, only that the man named Daniel had ripped open something buried deep inside her. She remembered her father as a quiet, serious man, a mechanic with a crooked smile and rough hands. He'd worked hard, came home tired, never spoke much about his past, and then one night he was gone, shot dead, no answers. Her mother had screamed until she collapsed. Now, 14 years later, a stranger drove her son to the clinic and left a photo of her father like it was some kind of message. Emily needed answers. She wasn't going to sleep another night without them. Her first stop was the Eastbrook Public Library. The local archives had always been the town's dusty attic, rarely used, barely maintained. She typed into the cracked computer screen, Daniel CEO, Eastbrook Tech. Dozens of results popped up. Daniel Carradine, CEO, investor, mysterious self-made, millionaire, moved away from Eastbrook in his early 20s, reclusive, no family, known for avoiding media. Net worth, $87 million. There was a photo, the same calm, calculated eyes. She leaned closer to the screen. Daniel Carradine, the man who had given her a ride. Her fingers hovered over the mouse. A part of her wanted to close the screen and walk away. But she clicked anyway. The article opened with a line that made her blood run cold. Daniel Carradine's rise began. After the sudden disappearance of his mentor and father figure, Robert Holland, she froze. Robert Holland, her father. The words on the screen blurred for a moment. Father figure. Disappearance. Not death, not a gas station robbery. She clicked open another article, and another, but none of them mentioned her father being murdered. Not once. They only said disappearance. They even linked him to a company, an auto tech firm her father had allegedly helped build with Daniel Carradine. This couldn't be real. Her heart raced. Her fingers trembled. Was her whole childhood a lie? Emily walked straight out of the library, her brain on fire. She needed to see him, talk to him, now. But he hadn't left a number, no address, only the photo. She turned it over in her hands. Again. Then she noticed something strange. In the corner, barely visible under the inked message, was an embossed logo, Carradine Holdings, and an address. Her pulse quickened. The building was glass and steel, towering above the rest of Eastbrook, like it didn't belong. A security guard at the front desk looked her up and down with suspicion as she entered, soaked from the rain again. "I need to see Daniel Carradine," she said, trying to sound firm. "Do you have an appointment?" The man asked clearly, unimpressed. "No, but he knows who I am. Tell him Emily Holland is here." The man frowned, then picked up the phone, dialed an extension, and muttered something. A pause. Then he nodded. "He says to go up." The elevator ride felt like a rocket launch. Her ears popped. Her heart thundered. When the doors opened, Daniel was waiting, alone. He stood by a tall window, hands in his pockets, staring out at the city below like it meant nothing to him. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said without turning around. "You left me no choice," she replied, stepping in. He finally turned. "You found the photo." Emily pulled it from her coat and held it up. "You knew my father?" "Yes." "You worked with him?" "Yes." "You said he disappeared." "But I was told he was killed, shot in a robbery." Daniel's jaw tensed. "That's not what happened." Emily's knees almost gave out. "You're lying." "No," he said softly, "but someone else did. For a long time." He motioned for her to sit. She didn't. Daniel let out a breath. "Your father was in trouble, Emily. The kind of trouble you don't walk away from. He tried to protect you, tried to keep you and your mother out of it." "What kind of trouble?" she whispered. "Corporate theft, blackmail. People he worked for wanted him silenced when he found out they were laundering millions through the company. He came to me for help." Emily's head spun. "My father was a whistleblower." Daniel nodded slowly. "They threatened him, said if he didn't back off, they'd come for you." Emily clutched the arms of the chair. "He couldn't risk it," Daniel continued, "so he made a deal, faked his death, went into hiding." "No, that's not possible." "I went to his funeral. I saw the casket." "You saw a box, Emily. It was closed. The body wasn't in it." Emily's heart dropped into her stomach. "No, my mother, she believed he was dead." She wasn't told the truth. Daniel's voice broke slightly. "I helped him disappear." Silence filled the office. The only sound was the rain against the window. Emily stood up. "Why? Why are you telling me this now?" Daniel looked up at her. There was pain in his eyes. "Guilt, because your father died. For real this time. 3 weeks ago, cancer." Emily stumbled back. No, this can't be real." He asked me to find you, Daniel said, stepping closer. He left something for you, and a truth you deserve to hear. Emily collapsed into the chair, tears brimming. You lied to me for 14 years. I didn't know where you were. He made me promise never to come near you unless something happened. He thought you were safer that way. She covered her face with her hands. And now he's dead again, she choked. Only this time it's real. Daniel walked to a drawer in his desk and pulled out a sealed envelope. He wrote you a letter. Emily took it with shaking hands. She opened it slowly. Dear Emily, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and I can finally stop running. Not a day passed that I didn't think of you. I missed every birthday, every scraped knee, every hug I should have given, and I hated myself for it. I never meant to disappear. I only meant to keep you alive. Daniel saved me. He risked his life more than once to help me stay hidden, but the guilt ate me alive. I watched you grow up from a distance. I even saw Micah once, and he looked so much like you at that age. Please forgive me, and please let Daniel help you. He's not just a friend, he's family. You just never knew it. Love always, Dad. Emily dropped the letter, unable to breathe. What does he mean, family? Daniel hesitated, then he said it. I'm your half-brother, Emily. Her brother had been watching all along, but he wasn't the only one. Emily's world fractured in a single sentence. I'm your half-brother, Emily. The silence in Daniel's office roared louder than thunder. She stared at him like he'd just admitted to being a ghost. She wanted to laugh, scream, collapse. Run! Is this some kind of joke? She croaked. Daniel's expression didn't flinch. His voice remained calm. I wish it were. Emily's knees weakened beneath her. She dropped into the nearest chair like her body had given up holding up the weight of 14 years of betrayal. How? She whispered. He walked toward the massive window overlooking the city. For a second, he looked less like a billionaire and more like a scared little boy. Your father had a relationship before he met your mother, he said. A brief one, with my mother. I was born out of that. Emily's lips parted, but nothing came out. He didn't even know I existed. Until I was 7. My mother kept me hidden from him. When she died, he found me through a social worker. Daniel paused. He took me in, quietly, helped raise me. But he couldn't tell anyone. Not your mother, not you. He was trying to start over. You were his new life. I was a secret. Emily's eyes burned. So you watched me grow up, knowing I was your sister, and said nothing. I didn't just watch, Daniel said. I protected you. When things went bad, I chose to vanish with him. But I didn't get a choice, she cried out, voice trembling. I was left behind. I was just a kid. My mother and I lived like ghosts. You got to run away, play spy games and corporate hero while we... Her throat closed. I know, Daniel said quietly. I live with it every day. She stood, gripping the letter from her father. Is that why you showed up now? Guilt? Daniel shook his head. No, something else. Something worse. He motioned her toward a screen on the wall. A video. Your feed popped up. Surveillance footage, blurry, grainy. It showed her leaving the daycare with Micah from the day before. What is this? She asked, ice crawling into her veins. They've found you, Daniel said, voice clipped. The same people who wanted Dad silenced. I thought they were gone. I was wrong. Emily's chest tightened. They're watching me. They've been watching me. But you got caught in the net. Her pulse pounded. Why? I don't know anything. Daniel turned to her, eyes grave. They think you might. Especially now that I've contacted you. And if they find out you're his daughter. His voice trailed off. Micah. Oh my God. Emily whispered. They could come after my son. Daniel didn't answer. He didn't need to. Why would they care? Emily demanded. You're rich, powerful. You could ruin them. I could, Daniel said, and they know it. But the closer I get to exposing the truth behind the old company, the more desperate they get. They've already sent warnings. What kind of warnings? He walked to his desk and pulled open a drawer. Inside was a scorched piece of plastic. Her mouth dropped open. She choked. That's a car seat. Your old one, Daniel said grimly, from storage. I got the message 2 nights ago. Emily couldn't breathe. They burned it, he nodded, and left it on my doorstep. She gripped the edge of the table, trying to stop her hands from shaking. How do I protect Micah? Daniel looked her in the eyes. You come with me, tonight. What? I've got a safe house, off-grid. No phones, no tracking. We'll stay for a few days while I work on flushing them out. Emily's instinct screamed to say no. She barely knew this man. Half-brother or not, he was still a stranger. But Micah, her son's sleepy face filled her mind, and she nodded. Back at her apartment, Emily packed what little she had, a backpack of clothes for Micah, her mother's locket, Micah's favorite stuffed giraffe. When she picked him up from daycare, she held him longer than usual. Where are we going, Mommy? He asked. Somewhere safe, baby. Is it far? A little, she whispered, kissing his forehead, but we'll be okay. Daniel was waiting in a black SUV, parked 2 streets down to avoid suspicion. No chauffeur this time. Just him, behind the wheel. Micah climbed into the back, clutching, his giraffe yawning. Daniel handed Emily a burner phone. Don't use your old one, toss it. She threw it out the window, and they drove. The safe house was deep in the hills, past winding roads and faded signage. The kind of place that didn't exist on GPS. It looked like an abandoned ranger cabin, stone walls, old generator, no power lines. Inside, though, it was fortified. Steel doors, surveillance screens, medical supplies. Welcome to your new home, Daniel muttered. For now. Emily stood stiffly near the door. You built this for him? She asked. He nodded. It was our last fallback, in case we ever needed to disappear again. Micah climbed onto the faded couch and was asleep within minutes. Daniel made tea. Emily held the warm mug, but didn't drink. Why didn't he tell me about you? She finally asked. He wanted to, many times, but he was scared. Scared. I'd hate him? Scared you'd be dragged into his past, into this. She looked down. Too late for that. That night she opened the second letter, another envelope, smaller, tucked inside the first. She hadn't seen it until Daniel mentioned her father had left more. This one had only 4 words. Check the music box. Her heart caught in her throat. She hadn't touched the old music box in years. It sat dusty in the top of her closet, a childhood relic with a broken ballerina. She looked up at Daniel. I need to go back. No, he said instantly. Too dangerous. I have to, I think. He left something else, a clue. I'll go. No, she said firm. They don't know my face. Not really. If I'm careful. He stared at her for a long beat, then finally nodded. Emily left early. Before sunrise, the streets were still sleeping. Her hoodie masked her face. She took side roads, avoided cameras. Her heart pounded with every step. She reached her building, climbed the stairs. Her door was ajar. She froze. Someone had been here. Inside, the apartment was ransacked. Drawers open, cushions slashed, photos shattered. They were looking for something. What did they think she knew? She stepped over broken glass and opened her closet. The music box was gone. No, she whispered, but something caught her eye. In the debris, a flash of pink fabric, Micah's blanket. They'd taken it. Why? Suddenly she heard a creak behind her. She turned, a shadow in the hallway, and then a voice she hadn't heard in over a decade. Low. Cold. You look just like your mother. Emily's blood turned to ice. The man in the doorway was tall, grey. At the temples, his eyes like 2 stones. She didn't recognize him, but something about his presence made her skin crawl. Who are you? She demanded. He stepped forward. I'm the man your father betrayed. She backed away. What do you want? He smiled. I want what he stole. And I think you know where it is. I don't, she said quickly. He tilted his head. You're lying. I don't even know what you're talking about. He stepped closer. The ledger, the recordings, the evidence he kept. Emily's mind raced. Was that what the music box held? A hidden drive, some kind of blackmail? She stayed calm. I don't have anything. He raised a brow. You will. Eventually. Everyone breaks. Before she could react, he lunged. Emily grabbed a photo frame from the table and smashed it into his face. He stumbled back, cursing. She ran down the stairs, through the alley, heart hammering. She didn't stop until she saw Daniel's SUV waiting 2 blocks away. He jumped out as soon as he saw her. Are you hurt? No, but they were there. One of them. He said, he wants the ledger. Daniel's face darkened. Then they haven't found it yet. They sped off into the hills. Back at the safe house, Emily checked on Micah. He was still sleeping, breathing softly. Safe, for now. Daniel sat across from her, a map spread between them. There's only one other place he could have hidden it, he said. Where? Daniel pointed. The cabin, the one where he raised me, in the woods outside Millstone. Emily took a deep breath. Then we go there. Daniel looked at her, surprised. You're not scared? She looked toward her son. I'm terrified, then met his eyes, but I'm done running. They drove into the woods, but what they found, buried, wasn't just evidence. Emily had never seen the forest so quiet. The road to Millstone twisted through thick pine trees, gravel crunching under the tires. Daniel drove in silence, eyes on the curves ahead, lips pressed in a firm line. Micah was asleep in the back, hugging his stuffed giraffe, unaware that they were speeding towards secrets his grandfather died to protect. Tell me about the cabin, Emily finally said. Daniel didn't take his eyes off the road. He built it before I ever knew him, he said. Said it was a place no one could follow him. No records, no address, just a name carved into the beam above the door. What name? He looked at her for a split second. Truth. Emily swallowed hard. So the ledger, everything. He was hiding, might be there. Daniel nodded once. If it still exists, it's buried somewhere on that property. He wouldn't have trusted anyone else with it. And if those men find it before us, Daniel's jaw clenched, then your life and Micah's won't be the only ones at risk. The sun was low by the time they pulled off the main road and began the last leg of the journey. Trees closed in like sentinels, towering over the narrow dirt path. Emily reached for her son's hand, more for her own comfort than his. When they finally arrived, the cabin appeared like a ghost out of the forest mist. Weathered wood, moss growing on the roof, shutters barely hanging on. But the front door stood solid. A word was carved into the wooden beam above it, just as Daniel said truth. They stepped inside. Dust covered everything. A thick silence wrapped around them, disturbed only by the occasional creak of the floorboards. Emily looked around. The place felt like it hadn't been touched in years, and yet it didn't feel dead. It felt watched. Daniel closed the door behind them and locked it. Emily scanned the room. Stone fireplace, rusted iron stove, shelves of old books, and a faded portrait above the mantel. Her father, younger, smiling. She felt a sting in her chest. Where do we start? She asked quietly. Daniel walked toward the fireplace. He always said, truth needs fire to shine. Emily blinked. You think something's hidden in the fireplace? He nodded. Wouldn't be the first time. For the next hour they scoured the cabin. Micah sat on the floor drawing with a stubby pencil and notebook Daniel had found in a drawer. Emily tore through cabinets, floorboards, and old trunks, while Daniel dismantled the hearth stone by stone. Just when Emily was ready to give up, Daniel let out a sharp breath. Got something. She hurried over. Beneath the last blackened stone, a metal box sat wedged in the ash, edges corroded by time but intact. Daniel lifted it out, wiped off soot, and opened it. Inside, a leather-bound notebook, a thumb drive sealed in plastic, and a Polaroid of 2 men in suits. One was her father, the other she didn't recognize. On the back of the photo, in her father's handwriting, "If this is found, expose him. Never trust a smile." Emily stared at the picture. The stranger beside. Her father looked polished, charming, and cold. Daniel held up the drive. This could be everything. Financial records, names, transactions, blackmail material. Enough to bring down their entire network. She nodded. "Then we take it to the authorities." Daniel hesitated. "That's the problem. What do you mean? I don't know who we can trust." That night, they sat by the fireplace, the box between them like a loaded gun. Emily watched Micah sleep, small and warm on the couch under an old quilt. "Who's the man in the photo?" she asked. Daniel rubbed his temples. "His name's Charles Redding. Publicly, he was just a wealthy philanthropist, but behind the scenes, he ran the shell companies that moved the money, arms deals, offshore laundering, fake charities. Your father tried to leave. That's when the threats started." "And that's when he ran," Emily murmured. Daniel nodded. "He faked a deal, disappeared with the ledger, and kept me off the grid. But something went wrong." Emily looked at the notebook again. Her father's words were scribbled in the margins, like warnings from a man haunted by everything he knew. "Don't let her carry this burden. The truth will try to kill her. If Daniel finds this, he knows what to do." She looked at Daniel. "Do you?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I do." But before he could explain, the wind outside shifted. A twig snapped. Emily froze. Daniel reached for the rifle mounted on the wall, loaded it with smooth precision, then crept to the window and peered out. Two silhouettes, moving between the trees, armed. He turned to her, voice sharp and low. "They found us." What followed was chaos. Daniel shoved the metal box into Emily's hands. "Take Micah, out the back, down the slope. You'll find a creek. Follow it to the old hunter's trail. It leads to an abandoned ranger station. Hide there." "What about you?" "I'll hold them off. Go. Now." She didn't argue. She snatched Micah into her arms, still wrapped in the quilt, and darted through the back door. The cold bit into her skin, and branches tore at her hoodie as she ran downhill into darkness. Gunshots cracked behind her. Micah whimpered, half asleep as she pushed through brambles, heart hammering in her throat. "Mummy, what's happening?" "We're playing hide and seek," she whispered. "You have to be really, really quiet, okay?" He nodded, eyes wide, clutching her neck. They reached the creek and stumbled along its edge for what felt like hours, mud sucking at her shoes, tree roots tripping her every few steps. She didn't look back, didn't dare imagine what Daniel was facing. Eventually the creek opened into a clearing, and there it was, a small ranger outpost, long abandoned. Door half hanging from rusted hinges. She ducked inside, laid Micah in the corner, and cried silently in the dark. It wasn't until morning that Daniel found them. He looked like hell. Blood on his sleeve, a gash on his forehead, one eye swelling shut. But he was alive. "They're gone," he rasped. "For now, I took out one. The others fled." Emily ran to him and hugged him hard. "I thought—" She choked. "I thought you were—" "Me too," he said, half smiling. He collapsed onto the floor beside Micah, who stirred and blinked up. "You came back," the boy mumbled. Daniel ruffled his hair. "Of course I did." They made their way down the mountain by late afternoon. Daniel wouldn't say much, but Emily knew he was thinking the same thing she was. This wasn't over. Back at the safe house, Daniel finally plugged the thumb drive into a secure laptop. Files, videos, recordings, names, dates, transfers, Redding's entire empire exposed in bytes. "I need to take this to someone who won't sell us out," Daniel said. "There's one person left in the FBI who might listen. An old friend of Dad's." Emily placed a hand on the box. "I'm coming with you." Daniel shook his head. "It's too risky." She stared him down. "This was my father, my life, my son's future. I'm not sitting this one out." Daniel gave a tired sigh. "You're just as stubborn as he was." "Good," Emily said, "because I'm not done fighting." She walked into the FBI, but but the one, waiting inside, knew her name. The fluorescent lights buzzed above Emily's head as she stepped into the FBI field office in downtown Denver, her hands trembling slightly despite her best efforts to appear composed. She clutched her handbag tightly. Inside was the thumb drive containing her father's deadly secret, protected by layers of encryption Daniel had configured overnight. She had no idea who to trust, but Daniel did. He walked beside her with quiet purpose, nodding politely at the armed security guard. Micah stayed behind at a safe house under the care of a trusted neighbor. Emily had kissed him twice before they left and whispered, "Mommy will be right back. Be brave." Daniel approached the check-in desk and slid a sealed envelope across the counter. "We're here to see Special Agent Carla Ruiz. It's urgent. She'll know what this is." The receptionist looked skeptical, but opened the envelope. Her eyes widened slightly, and within moments they were being led past glass doors, through a hallway and into a secure interview room. Emily's heart pounded. The door opened 5 minutes later. Agent Ruiz entered with sharp eyes and a steel-like presence that didn't match her modest frame. Her blazer was crisp, her dark hair pulled back into a tight braid. But what stunned Emily most was that the woman didn't even glance at Daniel. She looked straight at Emily and said, "Your father was the bravest man I ever knew." Emily blinked. "You knew him?" Ruiz nodded. "We worked together off the books. He fed us intel on Charles Redding's syndicate for 5 years before he disappeared." Daniel cleared his throat. "We believe his full ledger is on this drive. Transactions, identities, ties to corrupt officials." Ruiz sat down, her face unreadable. "Then you've just become the most wanted people in the country." As the drive decrypted, Ruiz leaned in. "Tell me everything." Daniel did most of the talking. Emily listened, still absorbing the fact that her father had risked his life for years, not just to protect her, but to dismantle something vast and sinister. When the files loaded, Ruiz scanned them with the quiet precision of someone who'd been hunting ghosts for decades. "This is it," she whispered. This is what he died for." She clicked on a folder labeled Final Insurance. Inside was a single video file, time-stamped 10 days before her father's death. Emily watched, her breath catching. Her father's face appeared on screen. Older, gaunt, but clear-eyed. "If you're seeing this, then I'm gone, and they're still coming, Emily. I know I failed you. I left you alone. But I did it to keep you alive. What's on this drive? This is what they'd kill to bury." Charles. "Redding isn't just a criminal. He owns judges, senators, even FBI agents. Don't trust anyone without proof. Not even the people wearing badges, especially not them. Trust Daniel, and if Agent Ruiz is still alive, trust her too." The screen froze on his tired, sorrowful expression. Emily swallowed hard, tears stinging her eyes. Ruiz leaned back. "He recorded that the day before his last attempt to bring evidence in. He never made it here." Daniel clenched his fists. "He was killed." Ruiz nodded slowly. "I suspected as much." A knock interrupted them. An assistant leaned in. "Ma'am, Director Stevens wants to speak with you. He says it's urgent." Ruiz's jaw tensed. She looked at Emily and Daniel. "Stay here. Don't touch anything." The moment she left, Emily turned to Daniel. "Is that bad?" "I don't." "Well, no," he said. "Stevens has always been slippery. If Redding owns agents, he could be one." Minutes crawled. When Ruiz returned, her face was pale, lips tight. "We've got a problem." "They're coming for the drive," she said, locking the door behind her. Emily felt like the air had been sucked from the room. Daniel stood up. "What do you mean?" "Someone tipped them off. Stevens is sending a team to secure you for debrief, but I heard the tone. They're not bringing you in. They're disappearing you." She pulled out a burner phone and tossed it to Daniel. "Coordinates are preloaded. Remote safe house outside Gunnison. Go now. I'll create a distraction." Emily stood too. We're not leaving without that drive." Ruiz gave a tight nod. "It's cloned. This," she handed Emily a second thumb drive, "is encrypted with a shadow key. Only 3 people can open it. Me, you, and someone your father referred to as the witness." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Who the hell is the witness?" Ruiz looked at them both. "A journalist, one your father trusted with his life. They barely made it out." Daniel hotwired a grey, unmarked SUV from the back lot. Ruiz triggered a building-wide security lockdown, claiming a fire drill, buying them 10 precious minutes. As they pulled into traffic, Emily looked out the window and whispered, "He knew this would happen. He knew they'd keep coming." Daniel kept his eyes on the road. "He didn't run. He prepared you." Emily felt something rise in her, past the fear, deeper than the grief. Fire. The safe house outside Gunnison was buried deep in the pines. A single-level ranch that looked abandoned to the world. Micah was already there. He ran into her arms as soon as the SUV pulled up, his little body warm and soft against her chest. "Mommy, you're back." She kissed his hair and whispered, "Always." They stayed in the cabin 2 more days. Ruiz sent updates via burner phones. The FBI was split down the middle. Some wanted Emily arrested for obstruction of federal investigations. Others wanted her dead. But there was still hope, because the witness had responded to Ruiz's outreach. A meeting was set. The man's name was Jonah Gray, investigative journalist, Pulitzer-nominated. Last seen 3 years ago after exposing a military contractor's human trafficking ring and promptly vanishing. Emily and Daniel met him in a remote gas station parking lot outside Telluride, snow swirling in the air. He looked worn, beard down to his chest, had pulled low, but his voice was sharp. "You're the girl in the Polaroid," he said to Emily. "He used to carry that picture around." She blinked. "You knew my father?" "I owed him my life. And now it's time I repay that debt." They handed him the drive. Jonah plugged it into his encrypted laptop, scanned the contents, and whistled softly. "This isn't just a story," he murmured. "This is the fall of an empire." Daniel spoke quietly. "Can you get it out there?" Jonah smiled grimly. "Oh, it's already uploading. Mirror servers, leaks scheduled. If anything happens to me, it still goes public. The truth is finally free." Emily felt like she could breathe again, for the first time in weeks, but peace lasted less than a day. They were driving back to the safe house when a black SUV rammed them off the road. Tires screamed, glass shattered. Daniel swerved but couldn't. "Hold it!" The car flipped once, then landed hard in a snowbank. Dazed, Emily clawed her way out, pulling Micah from the back seat as Daniel kicked open the door. Gunfire rang out. Daniel grabbed her hand and yelled, "Run!" They bolted into the woods, snow flying up around their feet. Behind them, voices. Then, a scream. Daniel spun, rifle raised, but it wasn't him they were after. It was Micah. Emily turned in time to see a masked man sprinting toward her boy. And, in that moment, nothing else mattered. She ran, leapt, tackled the man to the ground. He slammed her against a tree, but she grabbed a rock and brought it down on his head with all the fury of a mother fighting for her son. The man slumped, blood in the snow. Daniel reached her seconds later. "You okay?" Emily stood, panting, holding Micah tightly. "No," she said, "but I'm done being scared." They made it back to the safe house by nightfall, bruised, bleeding, but alive. Jonah called with news. The story had broken. Headlines screamed across the internet. Global syndicate exposed. Redding empire linked to human trafficking, bribery, and murders, dozens of arrests. Bank accounts frozen, assets seized, but Charles Redding still missing. Emily stared at her reflection in the cracked bathroom mirror. The woman looking back at her was different now, no longer just a struggling mother. She was a survivor, and she wasn't finished. The man who tried to destroy her, she faced him with everything to lose. Snow crunched under Emily's boots as she stepped out of the cabin, the cold air biting at her cheeks. In the distance, mountains stood like silent sentinels under a steel-grey sky. Daniel stood beside her, rifle slung across his back, scanning the tree line. They had survived the explosion of truth. Charles Redding's empire had cracked, but not shattered. His lieutenants were falling one by one, extradited and exposed. His political puppets were under federal scrutiny, but the man himself, the ghost who ordered her father's death and came for her son, was still free. Emily could feel it. Like a thread wrapped around her spine. He wasn't done, not until he made her disappear too. That evening, Jonah Gray's encrypted call came in. "They found him," he said. "Costa Rica, private airstrip, armed compound in the jungle, FBI. Won't touch him, he's still got friends, but I've got a name, someone inside." Emily gripped the phone. "Send it." Daniel glanced over. "What are you thinking?" She met his eyes. "I'm finishing this." They flew out 2 days later on a private plane chartered by Jonah's contacts. Daniel made calls to former friends, military men turned private security, people who knew how to move off the grid. Emily packed light, a duffel bag, a photo of her father, and the letter he once left her, the one she thought was a goodbye, but turned out to be instructions for war. Micah stayed behind with Ruiz, in a safe house deep in Utah. Emily kissed him that night like it was the last. The jungle heat hit them like a wave as they disembarked in Costa Rica. Their guide, a local named Marco, met them with a jeep and a cautious look. "Redding's place is deep inland, tight security, but there's a weakness. River access from the back. You'll need to move at night." Emily nodded. Her body buzzed with adrenaline, but her mind was clear. "I'm not leaving until I see him." That night, under a moonless sky, they paddled silently upriver in a narrow boat. Emily crouched low, soaked to the skin. Daniel sat behind her, silent and alert. Ahead, Redding's compound rose like a fortress. Floodlights, fences, guards with rifles slung casually over their shoulders. Emily's heartbeat quickened, not with fear but fury. This was the man who had hunted her family, the man who sent killers after her son, the man her father had died trying to bring down. She wouldn't let him vanish behind palm trees and silence. They cut the motor and slid ashore. Daniel led the way through brush, using hand signals to direct the small team Jonah's contacts had arranged. Men who moved like shadows. They reached the outer wall by 2:14 a.m. That's when everything changed. Gunfire, spotlights, a shout in Spanish. "Intrusos!" It was a trap. Daniel cursed and pulled Emily behind a stone outbuilding as bullets shattered the jungle calm. 2 men went down in the first volley. Another dragged himself into cover, bleeding. Emily's ears rang. Her heart raced. Daniel's voice came low and fierce. "They knew we were coming. Someone betrayed us." Emily didn't hesitate. "I'm going in anyway." Chaos exploded around them, but Emily moved like lightning, dashing through gaps in the firefight, crawling under barriers, ducking behind a stone wall just feet from the main house. She could see the upper balcony, and on it, Charles Redding, older, thinner, but unmistakable. He stood calmly in a silk shirt, sipping whiskey as men bled below him. His cold eyes scanned the jungle like he was watching a show. Emily's fury ignited. She didn't wait. She burst from cover and ran. One guard spotted her and shouted, but she was faster, low, agile, fueled by years of pain. Daniel was right behind her, covering her flank, taking out 2 guards with silent, precise shots. They stormed the compound entrance. Inside, marble floors, chandeliers, opulence that stank of blood money. Emily led the charge up the staircase, breath ragged, heart hammering. She slammed open the balcony door and found him, Charles. Redding turned, startled, for the first time in his life, perhaps. He looked afraid. "Emily," he said, like her name was poison in his mouth. She didn't speak. She raised her weapon and stepped forward. He lifted his hands. "Listen, whatever you think you know, it's not that simple." She laughed bitterly. You sent people to kill my son. I did what I had to. You butchered my father. Redding's face twisted. Your father was a traitor. He betrayed everything. No, Emily said coldly. He believed in something bigger than himself. Something you sold for profit. Behind her, Daniel stepped in, weapon raised. Give us one reason not to end this right here. Redding sneered. You won't kill me. If you do, the truth dies with me. Emily took a slow step forward, lowering her weapon slightly. Wrong. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a tiny recording device. I've been live streaming. This entire conversation. Redding froze. Daniel grinned. Say hi to the world. Back in the US, Jonah watched the feed explode online. Live. Fugitive billionaire admits to international crimes in Costa Rican hideout. Within an hour, news outlets across the globe had the footage. There was no spinning it, no silencing it. Interpol agents moved within 24 hours. Charles Redding was arrested on the airstrip, trying to flee barefoot and in a panic. 3 months later, the sun set over the Utah Valley, casting golden light over the hills. Emily stood on the porch of a small house tucked into the trees. Micah played in the yard, laughing with a new puppy. Daniel leaned against the railing, sipping iced tea, his arm brushing gently against hers. The world had changed. The trials had begun. Redding's empire was shattered. Dozens of public officials were forced to resign. Emily's father was posthumously honored for his courage. Jonah Gray's book had become a global bestseller, dedicated to the man who died telling the truth and the daughter who made the world listen. Emily had refused every interview. She didn't want fame. She wanted freedom, peace. As the sky darkened, Micah ran up to her, eyes wide. Mom! Can we go camping tomorrow? Just us. She smiled and knelt, brushing his hair from his forehead. Of course, she whispered. Anywhere you want. He hugged her, his arms tight around her neck. Daniel smiled behind them, quiet. For the first time in her life, Emily didn't feel like she was surviving. She was living. The end lesson. Sometimes the people we think are ordinary. Single moms, forgotten daughters, tired survivors are the ones who change the world. Courage doesn't always come with a uniform. It comes when someone refuses to run, even when they have every reason to.